What's the story, everyone? Welcome back to Gaelic Games Fan TV. How is the form? I hope everyone is keeping wonderfully well. Someone said to me recently, I said wonderfully well to once. So anyway, it's that time of the year where we look back at the All-Ireland Senior Football Championship. We grade every county from A to F based on how they performed in the All-Ireland Senior Football Championship and the National Football League. So basically, overall, how did they perform in the entirety of 2023 from an inter-county point of view? Obviously, we're disregarding pre-season competitions. They're just not important. Longford, for example, done really well in pre-season competition in Leinster, but then in the league got relegated. So it doesn't really matter pre-season competitions. But anyway, how do these grades work first of all? So we grading every side from A to F. No plus or minus grades, because I don't really believe in any of that crack, to be honest. An A is an A, a B is a B, and a C is a C. Do you know that way? Like a C plus, oh well done, you got a great C. Well, it doesn't make any sense to me. So obviously at the start of the season, every county would have had objectives, they would have had goals, they would have had ambitions. Obviously, we don't know for certain every county's ambitions and goals, but we can judge it off from previous seasons, and we can judge it off like expectations from fans and everything else. So for example, a county like Antrim would have been expecting to stay in Division 3, and anything that they done well in the Tailteann Cup would have been seen as a bonus. Whereas a county like Armagh or Mayo, they would have been expected to go a lot further in the All-Ireland Senior Football Championship. And you know, from a Mayo perspective, like their ambition would have been get to a semi-final, a final, possibly even win it. But given it was Kevin McStave's first season, I don't think Mayo were necessarily expected to win the All-Ireland in his first season. Like, they obviously haven't won the All-Ireland in 70 odd years, so that would be very unrealistic. So that's what these grades are based off. So if one team gets an A and another team gets a C or a D, like, it doesn't necessarily mean the team that gets an A is better than the county that gets a C or a D. It's just basically based off what their expectations would have been at the start of the season. For example, like Kerry, like they would have been expecting to win the All-Ireland. Like, that was the clear goal, the clear vision, like that was the clear ambition from day one. So like, if another team gets an A and Kerry don't get an A, it doesn't mean that another team is better than Kerry. It just means that they had a better season than Kerry compared to what they were expected to achieve. To be fair, I do think it's quite an easy thing to understand, but unfortunately I do think sometimes some people do get a bit confused. So I do think it's just important to clarify that. And look, this is obviously my opinion, so like, your opinion's going to be different to mine. So if you do disagree, let me know in the comments down below. And yeah, we're going to be grading every county from A to F. We're going to go in alphabetical order per province. So we're going to start with Ulster, we're then going to go down to Leinster, Munster, and then we'll finish up with Connacht. We'll go in alphabetical order by province, or we'll go province by province, just because it's easier to discuss that, because of the fact that I probably get confused and forget certain counties, which I normally do. So anyway, enough of me rambling, let's get into it. Now, in the past, usually I would do a podcast style video of this, and we'd get one of the lads on and we'd review it. But to be honest, like, that normally goes on for like 2 hours long. So we're going to try to be quick with a lot of these grades. We've 33 teams in total to run through. London and New York will be included as well. So we really have a lot to run through. So we'll start with Ulster, start with Antrim. We'll throw how Antrim did on screen. So you'll see in Division 3, they finished 6th with 4 points. And in the Tailteann Cup, they reached the semi-finals. All in all, a very good season for Antrim. First season for Andy McEntee. I think most people were expecting Antrim to get relegated from Division 3. There really hasn't been any underage at all in the last couple of years, and one would wonder, like, with players like Paddy Cunningham retiring and other players getting on, you just looked at Antrim and thought, how are they going to stay in Division 3? But in the end, they did it. You know, they finished with 4 points, a win and 2 draws. I do think Antrim were not necessarily lucky, but I think they were fortuitous to the point that Longford had an absolute disaster of a season, and 4 points in most, you know, and 1 win in most other seasons would still be enough to go down. But you have to credit Antrim. Their Tailteann Cup was fantastic. Their group stage, they won every game in a tough group as well. And I think Andy McEntee deserves a huge amount of credit. So I'm torn between an A and a B. I think an A is fair, considering they got to the semi-final and they pushed Meath as close as they did. But I do think at the same time, they did finish with 4 points, 1 win in Division 3. Do you know what? We'll go with an A. I think to get to a semi-final and push Meath as close as they did, I think is quite a phenomenal achievement. Like, Andy McEntee's first year as well. So we'll give Antrim an A. Could they have done more this year? I'm not entirely sure that they could have. So what a season for Antrim. We'll go with an A. Move on to Armagh then, and we'll go with a C for Armagh. I think, yeah, like Armagh is such a difficult one because, I don't really like Armagh. Like, they got to an Ulster final, lost on penalties. Got to an All-Ireland quarter-final, lost on penalties. Had they won that Ulster Championship and won the game against Monaghan on penalties, it would have been an A. Like, an Ulster Championship and an All-Ireland semi-final is an out-and-out A for Armagh, considering they haven't won an Ulster Championship in such a long time and haven't got to an All-Ireland semi-final in God knows how long. But I think all in all, when you look at it, relegated from Division 1, as you'll see on screen how they done in Division 1. A disappointing season for Armagh overall. I think they haven't regressed, but I don't think they have necessarily improved either. And I was expecting Armagh to kick on huge time. I even remember making a video last year talking about how Armagh could be serious All-Ireland contenders. I really don't think they've kicked on at all, and I just wonder, like, do they need a change in management? Is McGeaney the right man? I don't really know, to be honest with you. I think Armagh have got a lot of very good players. They've got a couple of younger players coming through as well. I don't think they're a million miles away, but I do think they have a lot of work to do going into next year if they are going to win an Ulster title, if they are going to bridge the gap on some of the bigger teams. So for Armagh, some good moments this season, but ultimately there will be a bit of disappointment. Like, they should have finished Monaghan off in the game in the quarterfinals, and like they had Derry there. They were 2 points up going into injury time of extra time. So yeah, I think we'll go to C for Armagh. Like some good moments and some not so good moments, you would say. Cavan then, I think Cavan will go with a C as well. Promotion from Division 3, I think that was expected. I think anything less then promotion from Cavan would have been a very disappointing season. They won the title as well, and they did it fairly convincingly. Like, the promotion never really looked in doubt. They wrapped it up, I think, with 2 games to spare. They won the Division 3 title quite comfortably as well against Fermanagh. The disappointment for Cavan will be, though, the Ulster Championship. They were beaten by Armagh comfortably. Like, that was like an absolute snooze fest of a game. Like, Armagh just beat them comfortably, and Cavan just never looked in it at all. And then in the Tailteann Cup, to lose to Down as well, like, I think Cavan will look back with a good bit of regret in terms of how the Tailteann Cup finished up and how the Ulster Championship finished up. But I do think all in all, their primary aim was to get out of Division 3. Like, they're not a Division 3 or Division 4 side. They are a mid-level Division 2 side, in my opinion, and I think, they're back in Division 2 next year. New manager to come in, plenty of rumours. Danny Hughes, Stephen Poacher, Raymond Galligan, definitely going for what you would say a much younger approach of a manager rather than an experienced manager. But we'll see what happens there. But I think all in all, we'll go with a C for Cavan. They, I suppose, achieved their primary aim of getting out of Division 3. But I do think a side like Cavan should have done a lot better in the Tailteann Cup. And I do think a team like Cavan, 2 seasons in a row, to not win that trophy, because they might be in the Tailteann Cup next year. And to be fair, I don't think they'll want to be in the Tailteann Cup. But I think while they were in there, they should have capitalised and picked up silverware. And they haven't. And that's a disappointment. Derry then. Derry, I suppose, had a very good season. Obviously, you had the whole Rory Gallagher saga that happened in between. And that, I suppose, was quite difficult from a player's point of view. Obviously, there's much bigger things than sport. I'm well aware of that. But if we're looking at matters on the pitch, it would have been quite tough for the Derry players and backroom team and Kieran Meena to deal with everything that happened there, in the build-up to an Ulster final. But they still won that Ulster Championship, and they proved probably a lot of doubters wrong in their performance versus Kerry. They had Kerry on the ropes in that game, and on another day, they could have been in an All-Ireland final. I was thinking the other day, how would have Derry fared against Dublin in the final? I think Dublin still would have won the game, but I think it could have been a very similar match to how Kerry went about business against Dublin. Maybe Derry would have been a bit more defensive, but then again, Derry were so attacking against Kerry, and it surprised people. We'll go to B for Derry. A solid season for me. You could argue an A, but I do think at this stage now for Derry, their aim now is to win the All-Ireland, or at least get to a final, considering they've won back-to-back Ulster Championships. But it is important to remember, just 3-4 years ago, Derry were in Division 4. So it's incredible to think how far they've come in such a short space of time. But the underage is quite good, younger players coming through. They just need 1 or 2 more pieces of the puzzle. And I do genuinely believe Derry are the closest team other than Dublin and Kerry to win the All-Ireland. There's going to be a video coming in the next couple of days discussing Derry in more detail. So Derry fans, watch out for that one. But yeah, we'll go with a B for Derry. Donegal, it's an F. Donegal finishing bottom of Division 1. A very disappointing season from a Donegal perspective. In their group, they finished second, and they actually done quite well in the All-Ireland Championship in the end. The All-Ireland series, there seemed to be a kick with Aidan O'Rourke towards the end of their championship, but I think Donegal was a mess from start to finish. Paddy Carr resigning halfway through, Aidan O'Rourke then taking over, and Aidan O'Rourke stepping away almost immediately after the defeat to Tyrone as well. And the worrying point for Donegal is that there doesn't seem to be many front runners for that job. There's worrying times for Donegal. I think they do have good players. I don't think they're a million miles away from competing for an Ulster title, but I think they need to get the next managerial appointment right, because I worry that Donegal could possibly descend into the abyss in the next couple of years if they don't get it right going forward in the next couple of years. But I would go with an F for Donegal. A very disappointing season, beaten by Down as well in the Ulster Championship. Like, Donegal had Down's number for a good couple of years there, and to lose that, like, down in Division 3, do you know what I mean? Like, that's, yeah, I think Donegal had a very disappointing season. You could argue the win versus Monaghan is enough to give them a D, but I think at the same time, it was all in all just a very, very disappointing season for Donegal, so we'll go with an F. Down, we'll go with a B. They got to a Tailteann Cup final, which I think was a huge achievement for Conor Laverty's men. There has been a lot more of the Kilcoo lads who've come on board, like Micheál Rooney, Ryan Johnston, Eugene Brannigan. There is something building in Down. There is something building, and as Kieran Mina, but he even said in his post-match interview after the defeat to Kerry, he even said that, you know, Derry were in the same position that Down are in right now just a couple of years ago. So I think Down can be very, very happy with how this season went. It'd be interesting to see, can they now kick on next year, and how far away are they from some of the other sides in Ulster, and can they bridge the gap even more going into next year? Because Division 3 will be tough next year, make no question about it. But all in all, very good season for Down. We'll give them a B. Fermanagh, we give a B as well. They got out of Division 3, so they actually finished above Down in Division 3. Very, very good season from a Fermanagh perspective. No one expected them to get out of Division 3. I actually thought they would be closer to relegation than promotion, and you could actually argue in many ways that maybe Fermanagh deserve an A, because to get out of Division 3 with some of the sides that are in there, Cavan, Westmeath, Down, like, the fact that Fermanagh got out of there is, like, Offaly are in Division 3 as well. Phenomenal achievement. Phenomenal achievement. Sean Quigley in and out of the side at different times, but they had the likes of Olton Kelm, Darragh McGurn, all these players stepping up and delivering for Fermanagh. Look, the Tailteann Cup was disappointing. They lost to Derry and Ulster. Can you read too much into that? Like, I think that was probably expected. The Tailteann Cup was a big disappointment. They lost to Laois in the I think in the preliminary round game. So we'll go with a B overall. Like, their season probably did filter out after they won promotion. Let me know, Fermanagh fans. Maybe I'm being a bit harsh there. Maybe they do deserve an A. But I do think ultimately the Tailteann Cup was very disappointing. Like, I thought they were one of the front runners for that, and I think a county like Fermanagh to get to Croke Park, it would have just been huge for them. But look, they might be in the Tailteann Cup next year again. Who knows? But we'll give them a B for how this year went. Monaghan. Do we go an A for Monaghan? A B? I think an A, to be fair, because I think for Vinnie Corey in his first season to lead Monaghan to an All-Ireland semi-final, a win versus Tyrone in the Championship, and staying up in Division 1, again against all odds, beating Mayo on the final day, I just find it hard to go beyond an A. And that's not to say that there isn't another kick in Monaghan. That's not to say that there's going to be no improvement. I actually think Monaghan next year could survive comfortably in Division 1 next season. I really do. I actually think they could improve even further. It will be interesting to see players like Conor McManus, a few others, Carl O'Connell, Kieran and Darren Hughes. Do they stick about next season? That's going to be interesting. But I think all in all, this year, phenomenal season from a Monaghan perspective. They pushed Dublin very closely in that semi-final as well. I do think Monaghan are in very good steads now for the next couple of seasons, so I'll give them an A. And last but not least from Ulster, we have Tyrone. Very disappointing season for Tyrone all in all. Like, I suppose they survived comfortably enough in Division 1. They had some good moments, they had some bad moments. in Ulster, beaten by Monaghan. But Tyrone just had such a random and weird season when you look at a lot of their results. Like in the group stages, they drew at Westmeath, but they beat Armagh, lost to Galway. Tyrone could have been knocked out of the championship in the All-Ireland series, and they beat Donegal in the qualifiers, and that was a great result. It's mad to think, looking back, that I predicted them to beat Kerry in that game in the All-Ireland quarter-final. I honestly have no idea what I was thinking. And actually, if you look at my All-Ireland predictions video, I predicted Tyrone to get to a final. And I look back and think, what did I see? Do you know, what did I see? I think maybe I fell into that trap that Tyrone often set for you, which is when you doubt them, they come back to bite you in the neck. But this year I backed them for large parts, and they had a very disappointing season. So we'll go with a D. They got to a quarter-final. You could argue an F, but then again, they didn't get relegated from Division 1, and they still got to an All-Ireland quarter-final. I don't know. Tyrone fans can let me know. I'm going with a D, maybe an F, to be honest with you. Maybe an F, because they do have a very good team, but we'll go with a D. Moving on to Leinster then. We'll start with Carlow. Not going to spend too much time on this one. I'll go with a C. They finished down near the bottom of Division 4. They had a very good season in the Tailteann Cup, getting to a quarter-final. Do you know what? I'll go with a B, actually, because now that I think about it, Carlow, realistically, where can you expect a side like Carlow to do and get out of their group in the Tailteann Cup, beat New York, and I suppose they were expected to beat New York, and get to a quarter-final? They probably should have done better in Division 4, but then again, doing as well as they did in the Tailteann Cup is probably an overachievement. So, yeah, we'll go with a B. Dublin, you'll see I have the Dublin jersey. Still on. I'm going to keep this on now for the next couple of weeks. It's an A. Look, it's an A. I wouldn't have expected to say that a couple of weeks ago or a couple of months ago. If there was a sort of a time graphic of the grade that Dublin would have been on all season, it probably would have been D, C, F at different moments in time. And then against Mayo, we beat them, and that was the turning point. That second half against Mayo was the turning point in Dublin's season. Something changed, something clicked in that game, and honestly, we never looked back after that. And as much as as I criticised Dublin all year, the one constant was that when the going got tough in every game, no matter who we were playing, no matter how bad we were playing, we always found an answer to at least not get beat. Mad to think Roscommon, the only side we didn't beat in 2023. But I think all in all Ireland win, promoted from Division 2 as champions. Not that mattered. I think the All Ireland is the holy grail for teams like Dublin, Kerry and everything else. And yeah, we won the All Ireland, so it's an A. Kildare will go with a C. Kildare had some good moments this season, but also some very bad moments when you think about it. Division 2, they had an awful season. They were very good against Dublin in the Leinster semi-final. I do look back and think Dublin were very poor that day though as well, and if Dublin had been more on it, they would have put Kildare to bed a lot quicker, like they did in the game in Nolan Park a couple of weeks later. So I do think all in all, Kildare, to be fair, beating Roscommon and nearly beating Monaghan and nearly getting to an All-Ireland quarter-final, it does show that Kildare are not a million miles away. They had injuries this season as well. They know Jimmy Hyland for large parts. And I think they do have good players. And I think Kildare are in good steads going into next year. Don't get me wrong. I don't think they'll win the Leinster Championship. Or they might ruffle Dublin's feathers at different moments. But I just think Dublin are far too strong. But I think Kildare getting to a quarter-final in the next couple of seasons, or even getting to a semi-final, it's not impossible. They nearly beat Monaghan. And then Monaghan reached the semi-final, So Kildare, all in all, a C. I think they need consistency next year, though. Is Glenn Ryan the right man? I'm not entirely sure. It looks like he is going to stay on. Consistency is needed big time for Kildare next season, so we'll give them a C. With Laois, we'll give them a C as well. I don't know about Laois. They narrowly missed out on promotion from Division 4. They were very, very close. I think score difference in the end is what they missed out on. We'll see the league table on screen there. I suppose they got to a semi-final of the Tailteann Cup. They conceded 8 goals in that game versus Down. I don't know. I don't think there's been improvement from Laois, but I don't think they've gotten worse from last year. There is a lot of work going into next season. I think Billy Sheehan has stepped down. Be interesting to see who goes in there. I think they should be favourites to get out of Division 4 next year. But I think overall, Laois will look back at this season with a bit of disappointment, so we'll give them a C. Longford, an F. I think it has to be an F. I think to get relegated from Division 3 in the way that they did, I know they had injuries and a few players not making themselves available, Paddy Christie's first year and everything else. For Longford to get to the final of the O'Byrne Cup and then have the season that they had, and obviously, you can't count pre-season in this because ultimately it doesn't matter, do you know, that way? And I really do think they need to get rid of pre-season competitions. Just let teams play challenge matches, and it's just there's too many games to worry about. Get rid of the O'Byrne Cup, the McGrath Cup, the McKenna Cup, all these competitions. They're just not needed, but I suppose that's a conversation for another day. Longford, yeah, it's an F. Looked at very, in Leinster, obviously they did nothing. You wouldn't expect them to do anything there anyway. And then in the Tailteann Cup, they'd a fairly disappointing season as well, in fairness. So yeah, I think Longford, all in all, disappointing season from their perspective. They got knocked out by Down in the Tailteann Cup, which, to be fair, you would have expected Down to do so. But I think it was a disappointing season for Longford. I think they are better than what they showed. One would wonder, how will they fare in Division 4 next year? Can they get out of Division 4? I think they have the quality to do so. But I think for Paddy Christie and his point of view, there needs to be a kick next year, because first season and it was very poor, and that was a bit of a worry. For Louth, we will give them an A very good season for Louth. To finish third in Division 2 in a season where most people expected them to get relegated. A phenomenal achievement for Louth, a phenomenal achievement. The fact that they had promotion still in their grasp on the final day against Dublin and Croke Park was absolutely remarkable, and it just goes to show how good of a job Mickey Hart is doing with Louth at the minute. He deserves so much praise from a Louth perspective to get them to that position and get them to a Leinster final as well. I just don't think they could have had a better season than they had. They pushed Mayo so close in the All-Ireland series. They pushed Cork so close as well. With a bit more luck, Louth could have possibly gotten to preliminary qualifier, maybe even an All-Ireland quarter-final. And I think Louth are the interesting part will be for next season is that this season was so good. Can they improve on next season? That is the big question for Mickey Hart and Louth. But I think ultimately, phenomenal season for Louth. I know they got hammered in the Leinster final, and I know they got hammered in that game by Kerry, but those were two teams that got to an All-Ireland final. And realistically speaking, Louth, are they ever going to get to that level anytime soon? I don't think so. But I think for the county that they are, for where they've come from in the last couple of seasons, a phenomenal achievement, and I give them an A. Meath is a difficult one because Meath won the Tailteann Cup, and to win major silverware is a phenomenal achievement. But let's not forget to be in the Tailteann Cup in the first place for Meath. They were not expected to even be in the Tailteann Cup to begin with, because you looked at them and thought, in Division 2, unless they had a disastrous season, and then got knocked out early in the Leinster Championship to Offaly, you would have thought there's no way they'll end up in the Tailteann Cup. But they did, and to be fair, they won every game in the Tailteann Cup. They showed a huge amount of improvement, and there is a lot of, there will be a bit more of a buzz going into next year from a Meath perspective. But I think it is important to remember Division 2 was very poor, and then losing to Offaly as well, that was a massive setback. So I'll give Meath a C. Look, they won the Tailteann Cup, huge achievement from a Meath. You could argue a B maybe. Am I being a bit harsh? Maybe ever so slightly. But I still think, at the end of the day, they ended up in the Tailteann Cup because of how poor things went in the league and in the Leinster Championship. So, do you know what? I'll go with a B for me. They still won the Tailteann Cup. They still won major silverware. But I do think all in all, there will be moments in the season that Meath look back on and think that probably wasn't good enough. But look, they won major silverware, they won the Tailteann Cup, and I think, to be fair, having been in the competition, all you can do is beat what's in front of you, and to be fair to Meath, they did exactly that. Offaly will go to C. It's interesting, Offaly beat Meath in the Leinster Championship, and I'd wonder who had a better season, Offaly or Meath. Probably Meath, to be honest with you, because they won major silverware, and Offaly still ended up in the Tailteann Cup, but obviously exited quite early on when they lost to Wexford. So go to C for Offaly. An important point to remember with Offaly is the tragic death of their manager, Liam Kearns, that happened halfway through the season. And that was a huge disruption, obviously, to Offaly's season. And fair play to a lot of the lads for still keep going and everything. And very difficult, for Offaly to have dealt with that halfway through a season. So yeah, we'll go to C. I think all in all, Leinster semi-final, nearly got to a final, and to be fair, they had a lot of good moments this year, a couple of injuries, younger players coming through. So I think for Offaly, we'll go with a C. A fairly steady enough season from an Offaly perspective, you would say. Westmeath is a difficult one. It's a very difficult one, Westmeath, because they had a very disappointing season in Division 3, in my opinion. To knock it out of Division 3 again was a massive setback, and their performance in the All-Ireland series was exceptional. They very, very nearly beat Armagh. They should have beaten Tyrone. They pushed Galway pretty closely as well. Westmeath could have got out of that group, and I think Westmeath are not... you look at Westmeath, I think they're a Division 2 team. I think they are a Division 2 side, and they just need to get out of Division 3. And I think to knock it out of Division 3, and they weren't, even in going into the final couple of games, they weren't even in contention to get out of Division 3. So I think for Westmeath, I'll give them a C. I think how well they done in the All-Ireland series will give them hope going into next season. But I do think for Westmeath, they need to capitalise on the fact that they do have good players in Ronan O'Toole, John Heslin, Sam McCartan, Ray Kennellan. They've got good footballers. In Leinster, they lost to Louth. That was disappointing as well. But we'll go with a C for Westmeath. Wexford will go with a D. Wexford is just such an odd one because Wexford have this awful habit of doing terrible in Division 4 or being very inconsistent in Division 4. And then as soon as they play a team like a division above them in Leinster or in the Tailteann Cup, they'll go on a bit of a spree. And they did that. They beat Offaly in the Tailteann Cup, which was mental, and they got to the quarterfinals before losing to Meath. Wexford is kind of just a bizarre one, to be honest with you. They should be, with the players, they have good footballers. They should be challenging to get out of Division 4, but they just seem to have some mad, bizarre results thrown in throughout their season, like drawing to London or losing to Waterford as they have in previous seasons. So I think I'll give Wexford a D. They should be pushing to get out of Division 4, but for whatever reason they don't seem to be doing so. So we'll go with a D for Wexford. And Wicklow is who we will finish up on in Leinster. We'll go with a B for Wicklow. They got out of Division 4. I do think they probably were one of the sides that were expected to get out of Division 4 or expected to challenge to get out of Division 4, considering they were relegated from Division 3 a season previous. They done that. They did lose in the Division 4 final, but all in all, they achieved their Premier aim. A bit like Cavan in Division 3, they achieved their Premier aim to get out of Division 4. The Tailteann Cup was very disappointing, and their season did peter out after that. And I think I looked at them as a potential I think I predicted them to get to a semi-final of the Tailteann Cup. I thought they'd be serious dark horses, a bit like what we've seen with Antrim. But I think all in all, a solid season for Wicklow. They done what they needed to do, which was get out of Division 4, and it will be interesting for Oisin McConville next year to see can they kick on next season, because Division 3 is going to be very, very tough, I'm not going to lie, but we'll give them a B for how they done this season. Moving on to Munster then, starting with Cork, we'll go with a B. Yeah, Cork, look, to be fair, had a very solid season, to beat Mayo and Roscommon, two sides who were competing at the top of Division 1, I think is solid from a Cork point of view. Cork, though, do have this awful habit of when they play teams that are a higher quality or a team that would be perceived as better than them, Cork tend to raise their standards. It's kind of always been the Cork way for the last couple of seasons. Cork will play Dublin in the league, nearly beat them, but then they'll play Louth and get beat. They'll play Meath and get beat, but then they'll play Derry and draw. Cork are a very weird side at the best of times, but I do think the end of their season will give Cork fans hope. There is a good amount of younger players coming through at the moment, and I think Cork are not a million miles away from, I suppose we look at, Dublin Kerry probably as the two top contenders, but in the gap under, the gap underneath them, there's probably 5 or 6 teams. I don't think Cork are a million miles off those teams, if that makes sense. So I think Cork, it'd be interesting to see, back-to-back All-Ireland quarter-finals. Can they kick on even more next year? Could Cork get to a semi-final next year? I think it will be tough, but to be fair, the Division 2 was quite disappointing in some ways, but I do think all in all they'll be happy with how their season ended, so we'll give them a B. As for Clare, we'll go for a C. Com Collins is last season in charge of Clare. They got to a Munster final, but they did get relegated from Division 3, and I do think Clare, to be fair, in Division 3 were very competitive in a lot of their games that they played, and they pushed a lot of teams. They nearly beat Dublin. I remember being at that game in Croke Park. They were so unlucky not to win that game, and to think Clare could have been the only team to beat Dublin in Croke Park in 2023. What an achievement that could have been. But look, they got to a Munster final. They were fairly competitive in the All-Ireland series as well, despite losing every game. So we'll give them a C. Ultimately for Clare, they are predominantly hurling county. I think for Clare, to be fair to them, they've done the best that they could give. Obviously, the results probably did drop short, and they've been relegated from Division 2. I think I said they got relegated from Division 3. Apologies. They got relegated from Division 2. They'll be in Division 3 next season. So, look, Clare will be one of the favourites to get out of Division 3 next year, and it's going to be very interesting to see who they bring in as manager. So, we'll go to C for Clare. And then we have Kerry, the All-Ireland runners-up. I'll give them a B. Look, I think a county like Kerry won the All-Ireland last year. Ultimately, not winning the All-Ireland is a disappointment, but, I don't think you can give anything less than a B. Like, let's not forget they were level with Dublin going into injury time of that final. So it could have really went either way, and it was probably just one or two chances went away from Kerry and one or two chances went away of Dublin, and that was ultimately the difference. Like, I do think Kerry will look back on parts of their season with disappointment. Division 1, I think, to be fair, like, I think we will all look, like, I know in my opinion I'll look at the league in a different light next season because of how the championship is structured, because of how many games there are. I think the most important thing for sides like Kerry, Dublin, Mayo, just stay in Division 1 and then focus on the championship, because you have enough games to be dealing with in the championship now as opposed to previous seasons when you didn't. But the Kerry did lose to Mayo, obviously, in Killarney. Nearly got beat by Cork. There were some disappointing moments in Kerry's season, but they did get to the final and they were moments away from winning it. And I think had they have won it, they would have got an A, let's be honest. So we'll give Kerry a B. I still think Kerry are in good steads going into next season. They certainly aren't going anywhere anytime soon. But I think ultimately, look, they did lose the final, so we'll give them a B. Limerick will go to D. I do border on an F here, but I do think at the same time, it probably was a bit of an overachievement in the first place from Billy Lee to get Limerick into Division 2. Ray Dempsey came in with Limerick. Apparently, a lot of the Limerick players weren't happy with Ray Dempsey, hence why he left halfway through the Division 2 season. And they got relegated fairly comfortably in the end, Limerick. I think they lost every game. They might have drawn one. Yeah, fairly disappointing from a Limerick perspective. Tailteann Cup did offer a bit of hope. They had some good results in the Tailteann Cup, but ultimately they lost to Laois in the quarterfinals. We'll go with a D for Limerick. A lot of disruption halfway through their season. I think ultimately they probably did overachieve the season previous, but I don't think you can say there's been progress, and I think it is fair to say they definitely did regress from last year, so we'll give them a D. Tipperary, I think you just have to give them an F. I feel bad for Tipperary. Like, I think they had a golden era there. Like, I think it's important to remember Tipperary football were not always what Tipperary were a couple of years ago when they won a Munster title and when they were obviously getting to All-Ireland semi-finals in 2016 and 2020. So, like, I think Tipperary, like, I think they had a golden era and they're now out of that golden era, and I think Tipperary are probably back to probably what they're more used to if you actually look through the history of Tipperary football. That's not to say they don't have good players in the county, they do, but a lot of them just don't play for Tipperary anymore. Conor Sweeney's injury, like in the first game of Division 3, was a huge blow, and honestly that was Tipperary's season done there and then, in my opinion, because to lose a forward of that quality in Division 3, I think it was always going to be curtains for Tipperary. So you look, I think you would have to give them an F. Like, did they win a game this season? I don't even think I think they beat Waterford in Munster and they beat them again in the Tailteann Cup. But I think ultimately you just have to give them an F. Like, I don't really think Tipperary could have. I think it would have been a miracle, to be honest, if Tipperary had have stayed up in Division 3, considering Conor Sweeney's injury and the retirements and player turnover in the last couple of years. But I think ultimately, for a team that got relegated in the way that they did, not getting out of the Tailteann Cup group, I think you have to give them an F, unfortunately. And Waterford is what we finish up on in Division 4. Waterford is such a tricky one because, like, there really probably is nowhere for Waterford to regress to, if that makes sense. They finished 7th in Division 4. They exited the Tailteann Cup having not won a game. They exited the Munster Championship not having won a game. Like, I think Waterford, like, they're just, one thing you would say about Waterford is they're not getting battered in every game. They are being competitive in almost every game that they play. But you just wonder, like, what is it they can achieve? So, like, it's such a tough one. Like, I'll give Waterford a C because it's like when I have watched them play, it's not like they're not trying or they're not giving effort. The quality just isn't there. Do you know what I mean? It just isn't there. And You could probably say the same about Tipperary football right now as well. So I'll give Waterford a C. Like there hasn't been improvement, but I don't think they've necessarily gotten worse either. There probably is no way to get worse considering, only one team finished below them in Division 4. But yeah, I suppose we'll give Waterford a C. And we'll finish up on the Connacht Championship then. Galway. I think I'd give them a C. They got to the league final. They looked so good for so long. They won the Connacht Championship, and look, that has to stand for something. In fairness, there are good teams in Connacht like Mayo and Roscommon. Sligo were improving as well. And for Galway, they won the Connacht Championship fairly convincingly, you would say. They dispatched Roscommon comfortably enough, and they obviously then beat Sligo comfortably enough in the final. So I do think all in all Galway would be happy winning the Connacht Championship, but I do think like Galway, in my opinion, their season almost reminds me of, if you were to look at, I'd watch a lot of mixed martial arts and boxing, and Galway remind me of a contender for a title, and they're going on a spree, they're knocking people out, and then with a flick of a button they're just knocked out and they're gone. They're just out of the equation completely, and that was almost like Galway. If the All-Ireland Championship had been a league table, Galway would have been leading the title race for a long period of time, and then they just boom, dipped. A mad season for Galway. They looked so comfortable for so long, and then they lost to Armagh, and then they lost to Mayo, and their season was over. One thing I would say about Galway though is that they were only ever winning games closely, and in a similar fashion to Armagh, they went from a quite attacking style of football to quite a defensive style of football. I think they need to have more balance next season, and they need to be more ruthless. They didn't finish teams off when they had them last season. Armagh was a perfect example. They had Mayo on the ropes at different times in that game. So Galway are in good stead. They're a young team, and I think they will be close to the top teams. And honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if Galway won an All-Ireland in this decade. I think it is in them. It definitely is in them. But I do think at the same time, they need to evolve a bit more, and I think they need to be a bit more ruthless. But in terms of this season, we'll give them a C. Leitrim will give them a D. I was very close to giving them an F here. I think an F, you could argue. The only reason why I give them a D is because they were very close to actually getting out of Division 4. They had Sligo on the ropes in that final game of Division 4, and I often wonder, how different maybe their season could have been had they have won that game against Sligo, and possibly even against New York as well. Connacht, if you remember, they lost to New York on penalties, and they then lost every game in the Tailteann Cup, I think. So it was a very disappointing season for Leitrim. It's looking like Andy Moran is going to stay on from what I know. So I think next season will probably be the decisive season for Andy Moran, and we'll see how he gets on. They weren't a million miles away from promotion, but I do think all in all Leitrim will look back at this season with a huge amount of disappointment and regret, so we'll give them a D. London's a bit like Waterford. I don't really know. It's such a difficult one. You would look at it and think, do you give them an F because they finished bottom of Division 4 and lost the majority of their games quite comfortable? They drew at Wexford and drew at Laois in the Tailteann Cup. They drew at Wexford in the league. I don't know, at London, I suppose they did regress from last season. You would have to say that last year they were, they had a couple of wins in Division 4. I do think teams figured them out a lot more this year. I think the fact that London came in last season having not played for a couple of years meant that nobody really knew what London were going to throw at them in Division 4, and teams probably know a lot more about London this time around. I'll give London a D. Look, they did regress from last season. I do think at the same time, London are a side with limited resources. I think I remember seeing Michael Maher in an interview before saying that they have to change pitches sometimes in training, and they don't know where they're going to be training from week to week. So I think London, they are a side with limited resources. So I think, look, I'd give them a D. Mayo, the boys from Mayo. C, they won the league, beating an All-Ireland quarter-final. I think Mayo's championship season was very disappointing. They played 5 games and lost 3. Lost to Cork, lost to Roscommon, and then eventually lost to Dublin. Yeah, I think Mayo, considering that they were many people's front-runners for the All-Ireland before the start of the All-Ireland Championship, including me. I actually predicted them to win the All-Ireland and beat Dublin in the process, and kind of mad to think that now. But yeah, I think Mayo, they do have good players. I think they just need to evolve their game more. They only have one way of playing, and they need to evolve a bit more. They need to get with the times. You look at Dublin and Kerry, as much as they have quality and brilliant attacking footballers, they can switch it and be defensive like that. Do you know what I mean? So I think Mayo need to evolve their game a bit more. I do think all in all, Kevin McStay's first season, And I think to win the league was a positive, but I think all in all the championship was disappointing. So has there been progression from last year? I don't think so. But have they gotten worse? I don't think so either. So we'll give them a C. New York. I think the first time in one of these grading videos that I've done from previous years that we're actually looking at New York. I give them an A. Look, they won a championship game, and I think that's the holy grail for New York. Competitive against Carlow in the Tailteann Cup. They lost to Sligo comfortably in the Connacht semi-finals. But even to get to a Connacht semi-final was quite remarkable. So I think an A for New York. And then Roscommon, I'll go with a C as well. I think like Connacht, like Roscommon, Galway and Mayo all had very similar seasons in my opinion, and that's why I'm giving them a C. I think Roscommon probably did improve more than Mayo and Galway improved, if that makes sense. Like they had a very good league. Do you know what? I think like Roscommon you could argue get a B just because third in Division 1 was very impressive for a newly promoted side. They beat Mayo in the championship. They drew with Dublin as well. Do you know what? I'll give Roscommon a B now that I think about it. Obviously, the defeats to Cork and Kildare did leave a sour taste on Roscommon's season. I don't know. I know there's a few Roscommon fans who tune into this channel every now and again. Let me know, B or a C. You didn't improve from last season in terms of you lost to Clare obviously in that preliminary round game. But I do think there had been an improvement in some performances, and obviously it was Davy Burke's first season. So do you know what? I think there has been improvements, even though you lost in the same stage of the All-Ireland that you lost last season. So we'll go with a B. And then last but not least, we finish up on Sligo, and I will give Sligo an A. I think Sligo, they won the Division 4 title, they got to a Connacht final, and they also, in the All-Ireland series, they drew a game. You know, they didn't lose every game, and they were actually, you know, they drew with Kildare, and they were competitive in some games. Even in that game versus Roscommon, they pushed them fairly closely. I remember watching the game against Dublin. Even though Dublin absolutely hammered them in the end, there was moments in the game where Sligo actually played quite well, as bizarre as that sounds. Like, after 20 minutes, Sligo were leading Dublin 3-2, for example. And I remember texting one of my mates being like, what is going on here? And to be fair, it's a game of 70 minutes, and Dublin, once they got going, they absolutely, cruised past them. But you would expect that, considering Dublin went on to win the All-Ireland, Sligo won the Division 4 title. But yeah, look, Sligo all in all, very good season. And going into Division 3 next year, I think they could be a dark horse to get out of Division 3. I really do. Underage success looks very good in Sligo. Sligo football is in a healthy state, so we'll give them an A. So ultimately then, we will go ahead and wrap this up here. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Let me know your opinions on some of these grades. Obviously, bear in mind, this is my opinion, but feel free to disagree in the comments down below. And for whatever county you support, how would you grade your county season? Obviously, for me, as a Dublin fan, the All-Ireland is the holy grail. That is ultimately, it's the best that any county can do, I suppose, is winning the All-Ireland. So an A, from a Dublin perspective. But let me know for your own county, how would you judge your season? And any disagreements here, let me know in the comments down below. Leave a like and subscribe if you want to see me grade every hurling county. I did that a couple of days ago. That video's up on the channel already. So just click into recent videos on the channel and you'll see that. We'll be making a video in the next couple of days reacting to my 2023 GA predictions. I'm just waiting for the ladies football final to finish up, and then we'll be able to react to that video, because I did make a ladies football prediction in that video. And I'm also going to be predicting every club senior hurling championship and every club senior football championship. So that's going to be interesting. So that'll be out in the next couple of days. So leave a like, subscribe, and we'll chat to y'all later.